the problem is not for you. The problem is for all those around you.
Yes, I'm afraid that's true.
So what do you need to know as you go forward?
How long and how well I can sustain my condition as it is now. And when it stops being that, my life will change. Beyond a certain point, my life will be over.
Charlton Heston may have been the towering hero of Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments, and Planet of the Apes, but behind the scenes, he was no stranger to conflict. In fact, some co-stars drove him absolutely up the wall. Like Sophia Loren, she was one of the most glamorous women on the planet, yet Heston disliked her so intensely during El Cid that he demanded a body double for their love scenes. He wouldn't even look her in the eye, and she was only the beginning. In this video, we're diving into the top 6 actors Charlton Heston hated the most, from on-set clashes to Hollywood feuds he never forgave. Let's get into it. Number 1, Sophia Loren. Charlton Heston and Sophia Loren looked perfect together in El Cid, on screen, at least. Behind the scenes, they were basically oil and fire. Heston was cast first and treated the film like his personal kingdom. Then Sophia arrived, stunning, powerful, and armed with demands. A massive paycheck, her own hairstylist, script translations, schedule changes. To Heston, a strict, no-nonsense actor, this wasn't confidence. It was diva chaos invading his set. Things exploded once Loren began pushing for more romantic scenes. She wanted more emotional depth. Heston wanted a war epic. When some of her changes actually made it into the script, he took it personally. From there, the Cold War began. He refused to stand in the room for her close-ups, froze during love scenes, and even in the deathbed moment, where he's supposed to die in her arms, he stared past her. Later, he claimed bizarrely, "I was looking into the future," meaning anywhere but at her face. Producers said Sophia really got him angry, and Heston's son confirmed his father hated how her role grew during filming. It bruised his ego. He felt the movie slipping from his hands into hers. Loren never fought him directly. Instead, she sued the producer afterward for minimizing her on promotional posters. A silent strike back. They never worked together again. Critics later joked that the two stars spent most of El Cid just glaring at each other, and honestly, that's not far off. The movie became a classic, but part of its legend is that the great romance on screen was fueled by pure, unfiltered hostility when the cameras stopped rolling. Number 2, Jason Robards. Charlton Heston treated acting like architecture. Every word deliberate, every gesture carved with purpose. So when he signed on to Julius Caesar, 1970, as Mark Antony, a role he revered, he expected everyone around him to match his precision. Instead, he found himself opposite Jason Robards, whose cool, understated style clashed violently with Heston's classical fire. From the first rehearsal, Heston felt something was wrong. Brutus was supposed to be tormented, torn apart by guilt, but Robards played him like he was reading a grocery list. Flat, calm, almost bored. Heston never forgave it. He later called it the worst performance by a really good actor, saying Robards just read the lines with no passion at all. On set, the tension was unmistakable. Heston stayed silent, shaking his head after takes, retreating into icy professionalism while everyone whispered about the rift. What made it sting even more was that Heston believed someone like Orson Welles should have played Brutus. Someone who understood weight, he said pointedly. To him, Robards had hollowed out the heart of the film. But Robards didn't flinch. Privately, he shrugged off the criticism with one sharp line. "I'm not Charlton. I don't need to roar to be heard." The two men never reconciled. Heston went to his grave disappointed. Robards went on to win 2 Oscars, proof that his quiet style worked for him, even if Heston hated it. And today, Julius Caesar remains a strange Hollywood relic, remembered less for Shakespeare and more for the Cold War smoldering behind the camera. Number 3, Ava Gardner. Charlton Heston treated filmmaking like a military operation, disciplined, sober, and sacred. To him, the set of 55 Days at Peking was a battlefield, and everyone needed to show up ready for war. But Ava Gardner, she was a hurricane. Gorgeous, intoxicating, unpredictable, and to Heston, an absolute nightmare. From day one, they clashed. Heston arrived memorized and focused. Gardner drifted in late, drinking heavily, forgetting lines, even wandering off mid-scene without explanation. He saw it as sabotage. Unprofessional, he called her. Beautiful, yes, but reckless in a way he believed disrespected the craft. Gardner hit back with her signature sting. He was always so stiff, like he thought he was filming the 10 Commandments even when the cameras weren't rolling. Their tension was icy, silent, and unmistakable. Crew members swore you could feel it in the air. A decade later, fate put them together again in Earthquake. Older, worn, and a little softened by life. They weren't friends, but they worked. No explosions, no drama, just quiet tolerance. Heston admitted she showed up and did the job. Gardner didn't try to charm him, and he didn't expect perfection anymore. Still, the bitterness lingered. Heston later said she wasted her gifts on vodka and rebellion. Gardner never mentioned him in her memoir, but left one pointed line. Some men mistake control for strength. Sometimes the mess is where the truth lives. In the end, they were opposites destined to collide only once. Heston, the iron fortress. Gardner, the beautiful storm. No shouting, no reconciliation, just decades of cold distance between two legends who were never meant to share the same sky. Number 4. Sam Peckinpah. Charlton Heston lived by discipline. Order. A film set, to him, was a sacred machine. Every gear precise, every actor prepared, every moment controlled. So when he signed on to Major Dundee with Sam Peckinpah, he expected grit, not open warfare. At first, he admired Peckinpah's brilliance. The man could carve poetry out of violence. Ride the High Country had proved that. But on set, admiration quickly turned into dread. Peckinpah was chaos incarnate, drinking through the day, cursing out crew members, ripping pages out of the script in the middle of a scene. Heston followed a plan. Peckinpah set plans on fire. The breaking point arrived in the middle of a disastrous shoot. Peckinpah, drunk, furious, began verbally tearing into a crew member. Heston snapped. Mounting his horse, he charged straight at the director, not for the camera, not as a bit, but out of sheer fury. Crew members froze. Hollywood would talk about that moment for decades. And yet, when the studio tried to fire Peckinpah, Heston did something no one expected. He offered to give up his entire salary just to keep the director on the film. It wasn't affection, it was principle. Heston believed the movie should be finished, even if the set felt like a battleground. But the damage was done. Major Dundee became one of Heston's most painful memories, glimpses of greatness buried under chaos. Peckinpah later shrugged the feud off with a grin. Chuck took things too seriously. I just didn't fit into his machine. They never worked together again. No reunion, no apology, just silence, sharp enough to cut through the years. In the end, their clash became legend. A brilliant but volatile director versus a disciplined, uncompromising star. One worshipped disorder, the other worshipped structure, and somewhere between those extremes, a great film slipped through their fingers. Number 5. Steven Spielberg. Charlton Heston believed in heroes, mythic, larger-than-life figures who bent destiny to their will. And for decades he was that hero, Moses, Ben-Hur, Taylor on the beach. To Heston, casting wasn't just business, it was legacy. So when a young director named Steven Spielberg turned him down, it didn't feel like rejection, it felt like betrayal. In 1975, Universal begged Spielberg to cast Heston as Chief Brody in Jaws. It made perfect sense. He was a guaranteed box office draw. But Spielberg refused. His reason? If Charlton Heston walks on screen, the shark's already dead. He worried Heston was too heroic. Audiences wouldn't fear for him. Suspense would evaporate. And with that single choice, Spielberg accidentally created an enemy. Heston took it personally. Privately, he fumed, "Spielberg thinks I'd ruin suspense? I am suspense." And from that moment on, he vowed never to work with the rising wonderkind. 4 years later, Spielberg tried again, offering Heston a major role in 1941. Heston didn't even consider it. He dismissed the script as unpatriotic, but insiders knew the truth. He wasn't going to give Spielberg the satisfaction. Spielberg never bad-mouthed him, but the message was clear in every quiet interview. Old Hollywood didn't trust the new, and the new didn't need the old. They never reconciled, never collaborated, never even softened. As Spielberg rose to reshape cinema, Heston dug deeper into the past he believed Hollywood was abandoning. And so their feud lasted a lifetime. Number 6, Paul Newman. Charlton Heston and Paul Newman were giants of the same era, but they stood on opposite ends of Hollywood like two mountains that refused to cast shadows on each other. Heston was the classic hero carved from stone: order, discipline, duty. Newman was the effortless icon, cool, political, modern. They didn't clash publicly, but behind the scenes, the chill was unmistakable. Insiders always said Heston bristled whenever Newman's name came up. "Poster boy for vanity politics," he'd grumble. To Heston, acting was a moral responsibility. To Newman, it was a craft and a platform. His anti-war activism, civil rights work, and open criticism of Nixon made him a Hollywood liberal legend. But to Heston, who later led the NRA, Newman wasn't principled. He was reckless. Artistically, they were oil and water. Heston reportedly dismissed Newman's roles as just playing himself, too modern, too smug, too casual. Meanwhile, Newman stayed silent, refusing to engage, which somehow irritated Heston even more. Newman's friends later said, "Paul didn't want to argue with Charlton. He didn't even want to be in the same room." The closest they ever came to colliding was the towering Inferno. Both were considered. Newman got the role. Heston quietly walked away, officially scheduling. Unofficially, he wouldn't play second to a man he never respected. They never worked together, never reconciled, never even exchanged public praise. When they died months apart in 2008, the silence between them died too. Two legends separated not by scandal or shouting, but by ideology, ego, and a Hollywood big enough for both, but never together. Whether it stemmed from clashing personalities, political friction, or his old-school worldview colliding with a changing Hollywood, Charlton Heston's grudges weren't minor flare-ups, they were battles that shaped his entire career. He walked away from roles, turned down major projects, and held firm on principles that often put him at odds with other stars. What do you think? Were these conflicts a matter of artistic integrity or just stubborn pride? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive. See you in the next video.